அன்பு சொந்தங்களே, இப்போது நேரலையில் உங்களை சந்திப்பதில் மகிழ்ச்சி. தமிழ்நாட்டில் அரசியலை தலைகீழாக புரட்டி போடுவேன் என்று ஒரு பக்கம் ரஜினி மண்டபம், இன்னொரு பக்கம் கமல்ஹாசனின் மக்கள் நீதி மையமும் திரும்ப திரும்ப சொல்லிக் கொண்டிருக்கின்றன. இவர்கள் உண்மையிலேயே தமிழ்நாட்டு அரசியலை புரட்டி போடுவார்களா? தமிழ்நாட்டில் ஏறக்குறைய 10 ஆண்டுகளாக இந்த ரஜினி மன்றம், கமலுடைய நற்பணி மன்றம் இவற்றுடைய ரசிகர்களை நேரடியாக சந்தித்து அதனை தனது PhD ஆய்வுக்காக சமர்ப்பித்து இப்போது ஹேடல்பர்க் பல்கலைக்கழகத்தில் பணியாற்றி கொண்டிருக்கிறார் ரோஸ் கெரிட்சன். அவர் இன்றைக்கு நம்மிடம் ஆங்கிலத்தில் இந்த ஃபேன் கிளப்ஸ் அல்லது இந்த ரசிகர் மன்றங்கள், அவற்றுடைய டைனமிக்ஸ், அவை எப்படி செயல்பட்டன, அவற்றால் இந்த ரசிகர்களுக்கு என்ன கிடைத்தது என்பதை பற்றி நம்மோடு உரையாடுவார். வெல்கம் டு இப்போது. Today we are going to understand how the fan clubs of Rajinikanth and Kamal Hassan worked, or how the fan base was constructed by these two big stars in Tamil Nadu. We will try to understand that phenomenon through Rose Gerritsen, who is now working in University of Heidelberg. Heidelberg. Welcome to Ippodhu.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Okay. When I interviewed you, that was about 10 years back, you in fact gave me a kind of new understanding to the phenomenon of fan clubs. Particularly, you said that the joining the fan clubs itself is a process of empowerment for them locally. The fans, they don't have a face otherwise. Their face or their identity is achieved through their joining as members of the fan club of these big stars, both Rajinikanth and Kamal Hassan. And do you think that now they have announced, particularly Kamal Hassan has announced that his party name is Makkal Needhi Mayyam, and he is going to conduct his second big rally in Trichy tomorrow. And Rajinikanth already said there is a big vacuum, I am going to fill that up. He already started building the party structure. That is basically converting the fan organizations into a political party organization. That process he has already set in motion. That has already begun. So, do you see that from your interactions with the fans in the past, through their eyes, do you see that empowerment happening politically as well because of these announcements?
I'm not sure if it would really empower to the extent that is now expected, probably. If we go back to first my own research, I would like to make 2 points about that. First is about the fans themselves. Even though they felt empowered to a certain extent, this was actually very local. So politics in terms of getting my son to a better school, getting access to movie theaters, watching films, and then slowly, perhaps for some of them, also in terms of politics, getting into local political activities. I would not necessarily say parties, but sometimes that was the case as well. So that, yes, in that sense, it felt like an empowerment, and at the same time, a lot of fans also showed and said, like, okay, this empowers to a certain extent, but if you don't have the money, if you don't have the network, then empowerment is nothing, and the fan club doesn't help at all. So there was a group of fans that actually felt really empowered, or that sort of got something through the fan club that was more than only film. And there was a large group as well that actually didn't have this access and that just enjoyed being a part of a fan club as a youth culture, as getting to movie theaters, etc. So that is one part, and I'm very curious now how that actually ends up in converting this into political power or a political system, as there's probably the same difference between different fans and their socioeconomic background will also probably show up in sort of the structure in political ways. An example of that is probably Rajinikanth's fan clubs. I spoke to a lot of Rajinikanth fans that after he launched his party were actually in the beginning promised to be part of his party, but then ended up lacking the funds or the network and were actually frustrated. Then a new fan club was set up again, and people felt a bit like, yeah, now we're here, we're not really part of it anymore, so what happens to us now? So I'm very curious how that happens here. That's perhaps different than with Rajinikanth. There are of course a lot of differences to be seen already. But I think in terms of sort of the social structure of where people come from and then ending up in politics is probably very likely more or less the same.
Yeah. When Rajinikanth spoke in the MGR centenary function, he was very categorical, saying that there is a vacuum. After the demise of Jayalalitha, there is a vacuum in Tamil Nadu politics. That perception is also because of the fact that there is a legacy of personality cult in politics in Tamil Nadu. So the personality cult around Karunanidhi, around Jayalalitha, around MGR. So he is also speaking from that perception. There is a government here, elected government after Jayalalitha here, running the everyday affairs of the government, governance, everything. And there are political parties, new other parties have emerged. There is a splinter group of the ruling party that has emerged. But the very talk that there is a vacuum, I am here to fill up the vacuum, does it come from the understanding that there are no big personalities, larger than life personalities in politics? Probably that is what is required to conduct politics in the state of Tamil Nadu.
Probably to a certain extent, yes. There is of course indeed a vacuum of everyone directing to a certain person. That person is not there anymore. Karunanidhi is also getting, of course, more and more quiet. So also in the DMK, probably there is something that is going to change at least. But at the same time, I'm not sure if that vacuum is really. I think many people are happy that this vacuum actually exists, or that there is actually a moment where politics changes. I guess, at least to my knowledge, a lot of people were also fed up with the way the parties continue to be, in a way, very easy with this political person at the top. I am not sure if they will fill it to a certain extent, perhaps, but at the same time, again, there are two things that are probably important here. One is people maybe vote for a face, but at the same time they also vote for change or for things that they perhaps see in a certain person or in a certain party. So I'm not convinced that it's only the face or the personality that counts. And again, going back to my own research, what was probably the main story, what is always there about fans, is that they follow their star, they do whatever he says, and that's how they get into politics or get big, which is to a certain extent. Of course, they're there to support a certain star, they do support that face to a certain extent, or that personality, but at the same time they also use, or not, and I'm not saying that in a negative sense, but they use the fan club for their own interest, or they use a star, or they look at a star for their own interest. So I'm not sure if it's only the same story, of course, about MGR, that was through his films that he got so popular. To a certain extent, yes, that's the case, and at the same time, people are not only sort of following a star blindly and then voting for that person. So there's always a larger story behind it that people, I think, look at in terms of fans, but also the larger public. So they do fill a vacuum, but at the same time, the question is, of course, if they will actually fill that completely and replace it. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. There is also this understanding that there are few societies which create their own entertainment, and through their entertainment they also find their leaders. That is it's also a unique case in some societies across the world, in some cultures across the world. You have this phenomenon of people creating their own entertainment. I mean that they produce their own films. They are not dependent on any dubbed versions of other films. The maximum entertainment is produced by themselves, and also through entertainment they find their stars, their leaders. That is true of Tamil society in the last 5 decades at least. Last 5 decades, that is how particularly the Dravidian politics panned out, with the stars converting into the leaders. So is that phenomenon still holding good, looking at the entry of both Kamal Haasan and Rajinikanth? Unless there is a belief or there is a culture behind it, they will not make an entry. They will not try this out even. Though there are some stories where there have been unsuccessful attempts by Shivaji Ganesh and Pakiraj, and to some extent T. Rajendra. It is this legacy or the culture which has given rise to leaders from the entertainment sector. I'm not just an entertainer, I'm also a leader. This transition is happening, has happened earlier. So now that they are asserting, okay, I could entertain you, particularly listening to Rajinikanth's speech in the MGR centenary function, I have done my job well as an entertainer. Now give me the political role, I will do that fully well. That he asserted himself in that particular speech. Do you see that happening elsewhere in other cultures also? Are there examples?
Well, it's of course interesting to see how he sort of sees it as some kind of responsibility, indeed, as you says, as a sort of an entertainment leader getting into a political leader. There are of course examples, as in the Tamil film industry, Reagan and Schwarzenegger are sort of the main examples that everyone connects it to. But I think it's a larger thing that is going on, that is not only about necessarily movie stars entering politics, but about also this idea of people getting much more active. On one side, probably the population is also getting less active in terms of politics and less vocal, and at the same time, as you can see with Trump and in many other places where politics is getting tense, the responsibility, or people, this feeling of responsibility is getting also larger, which means that people enter politics that have no previous experience in many places, and that they also rely on a certain sort of media presence that is not necessarily film presence, but I think this idea of I'm a leader, I need to change things, and I need also this media environment around me is something that we can see in a lot of other places around the world as well. There's sort of the idea of personality that is constructed through media, that can, from soap opera stars to film, but also now Facebook and tweets and other ways you can get sort of a presence in media.
Even if because you talked about Reagan and Schwarzenegger, also a section of American media talked about Oprah Winfrey could be the challenger for Donald Trump. Are these perceptions constructed because you need larger than life images, larger than life personalities to really counter the political leaders who are seen as they are like challenging the system now. Particularly in the case of Donald Trump, he has been challenging the ways Americans think about women's rights, disability rights, all that. Is it also that people are forced to, or a section of media is forced to believe that only somebody who is very popular already among the populations can counter this big leader? Is that this syndrome, or
I'm not sure if it's the idea of that this kind of person is the only one that can change it, but it's probably someone that is easy to rely on, that you feel sort of connected to from the start, whereas a newcomer in politics, someone that is perhaps a decent politician, is someone without a face and first has to show if he or she is capable of doing something, where personalities, TV personalities or film personalities, of course, give already some kind of affection that people have for this person. That is probably the reason why people like this idea very much.
Okay, also now in the Tamil society we have seen these criticisms about the entry of Rajinikanth and Kamal Hassan, saying that already the people from the film industry like MGR, Jayalalitha, they have ruined the state of Tamil Nadu. So they have kind of enslaved the people of Tamil Nadu. So there are in other cultures, even in neighboring the state of Kerala, they don't do that. So we are so much addicted to cinema. So we are looking for our leaders from cinema. So this should change. So they have ruined the state of particularly somebody coming from cinema himself, Seema of Nam Tamil Katchi. There are activists, social activists like Subodhi Kumaran. They started coming out and openly criticizing the entry of Rajinikanth and Kamal Hassan. And also it is also going to very personal level criticisms. I don't want to go into the detail, but the fact that the Dravidian rule of the last 50 years in Tamil Nadu has seen greater achievements compared to the rest of India. When you compare the human development indices of Tamil Nadu to other states in India, the achievement is quite great. I'm not just saying this. Even Nobel laureate Amartya Sen, who has acknowledged that in the last 3 decades, Tamil Nadu has seen tremendous inclusive development, tremendous steps taken in achieving social justice. So, do you see these criticisms as valid? That the people who are criticizing the entry of Rajini and Kamal is valid in the context of the facts presented about the development in the last 3 decades?
I'm not sure if I want to say if it's valid or not, but I think it's more important that criticism is possible at all. I think an active civil society, the possibility of actively criticizing your politicians and your leaders, perhaps, if they get voted for, I think that is extremely important to have. And maybe Tamil Nadu is not doing well, it's doing well in comparison to other states in India. At the same time, of course, there are a lot of issues that were extremely wrong during the rule. But to relate that directly to film, I'm not sure if we should do that. But of course, this personality idea, if parties are so much focused on only this power of one personality, then of course it becomes a danger that all these wrongdoings are also not seen, and the fact that you can criticize that, I think, is extremely important.
You think that particularly when you talk about, because you have traveled extensively in Tamil Nadu in the last decade, so you're also talking about things which have scope for improvement. There could be things that are getting better, particularly the participation of women in politics, particularly the participation of Dalits in politics. So those things could be improved, those things could be better. No, there is still that perception. So particularly the tribals of Tamil Nadu, they still don't have access to good health, good education. It is still an issue there. So the underbelly of Tamil Nadu, which is also quite casteist, we are seeing number of honor killings in Tamil Nadu. So, but these 2 stars coming in are not really talking about the underbelly of Tamil Nadu, where caste still prevails and other major issues. They are still talking about probably they are using the same discourse or same language which was used by the Dravidian politicians during the last 5 decades. So do you see them, if they are saying that, okay, I am continuing on the path of legacy of Dravidian parties, so that is the best way to go about things for them, at least to get popular support get maximum popular support. If they are not talking new issues, do you see them gaining traction in this situation?
Probably that's the only way to go, to keep as close as possible to the status quo, and at the same time, trying to deviate a little bit from that. At the same time, what I've heard from the people that I've spoken to up to now, fans and non-fans, no one is particularly actually happy about this entry. So I'm really wondering, I cannot predict anything, I don't have any numbers on that, no idea, to be honest. But if I just see that in my own environment, I think it's in this case, people are perhaps a bit fed up with staying too close to the status quo. So let's see.
Okay. And when talking about particularly these stars, because they benefited by the status quo, like 5 decades of Dravidian politics, these two big stars are the product of that era. They benefited hugely by the status quo of how politics is conducted, how politics is done by both Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha, and also MGR. Particularly during MGR's centenary speech of Rajinikanth, he talked about how he adored MGR. So, do you think that they want to continue the status quo? If particularly you talked about the fans not very happy about the status quo being maintained, because if the status quo is maintained, they don't have a space, right? They don't have a space. Maybe people from other political parties will walk into these stars camps and they will continue to rule. They will continue to wield power. So the actual empowerment is going to happen only if these fans are really getting the sense of empowerment. From whatever little interaction, can you elaborate on that? What they are feeling, a little interaction?
I think if you look at the fans that don't have sort of the socio-economic possibilities to immediately enter politics in that way, they probably would be happy if the status quo changes, and of course if social and economic progress is sort of in whatever way coming towards them. But I don't see that happening very soon. But of course, this is only still a limited part of society. There is a large other part that is perhaps very happy with the status quo in terms of politics as well as voters or the population. So if you make one part happy, then probably another part feels offended, feels afraid about changes. So that politics is of course extremely difficult, which also explains partly why the status quo is the status quo probably. But I guess that in general, it would be great, of course, if they would come with totally new ways of trying to make certain things better that should be improved, like indeed women in politics, socioeconomic, Casteism, all kinds of issues that are indeed too present.
Yeah.
But I guess it's sort of a balance each time of if you make one person happy, then another feels offended.
Yeah, the picture is still unfolding in Tamil Nadu politics. I can tell you a couple of things. On the one side, we have actor Vijay, who has about a decade back, he converted his fan clubs into actual Makkal Iyakam. He called it People's Vijay Makkal Iyakam. What transpired in the last few months since the announcement of Rajinikanth and Kamal Hassan is that Vijay Makkal Iyakam, that fans of Vijay held a couple of major events in the western districts of Tamil Nadu, where in fact the ministers, state ministers went and participated. In fact, one minister spoke about actor Vijay supported Jayalalitha coming to power in 2011 through his Makkal Iyakkam. He wanted a regime change, so Actor Vijay supported. We hope that for the present government also, his fans will continue the support. So it was interpreted by people, including me, that because both Kamal Hassan and Rajinikanth have announced their political entry, the present government is trying to fall back on stars like Vijay, who have already a fan base from different socio-economic backgrounds. So it is very evident from the couple of meetings why ministers openly spoke about that. And also the fact that there are others who still see that they are not announcing anything new, whether it is Rajinikanth or Kamal, they are not giving, they are not changing the status quo in any way. But we are here for social change. For example, the bureaucrat, IAS officer Sahayam, who is now intent on entering politics because he wants to clean up the mess that is politics in Tamil Nadu. So those people are still talking about, honest politics, all that. The governments have become very corrupt, all that. So do you see a kind of balancing act from the people who are enjoying the status quo also because of the entry of Kamal and Rajini from the other side? The people who are enjoying the status quo are trying to keep up their power, their status quo through the support of other actors, who may eventually enter politics in the future.
I'm not sure if I'm in a position to really make a comment on that. I'm not because I don't know enough about it to say something. But I guess that's indeed the case, and if that's the case, then it's probably also to keep up the status quo. I guess that's. But more, I'm not sure if I'm.
Yeah. I'm just giving the information because I was just following how the people in power are trying to readjust to the changing scenario. So these facts are now emerging from the ground, particularly from the district of Namakkal and Krishnagiri. These two instances have come to my notice, and then I realized that they are not sitting idle, the present government. They are also understanding the challenge. So they are trying to counter or balance the challenge with their own methods. Definitely, that is, in society now you cannot sit idle when you are in power. So you have to keep the power going. So they are trying to find ways of doing that. This is just one example. They are doing other things as well, but this is just one example. Also, the other political parties, they want to keep up the status quo, so they are trying their own methods to stay afloat. Particularly the Kaveri issue, now it's the most talked about issue, the central government refusing to set up the Kaveri Management Board despite the Supreme Court order. Now every possible players in the political arena is trying to gain mileage. So we have a strike going today, a strike happening day after, that is on 5th, the DMK and combination. And on 11th there is another major grouping which is called for a strike against the central government. A lot of churning happening. Definitely things will be more crystal clear, things will crystallize better in the coming years when the elections are due.
Exactly.
Definitely. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your viewpoints from the eyes of the fans of both the big stars. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
வணக்கம் அன்பு சொந்தங்களே, ஊடகங்கள் என்பவை அரசாங்கங்களை, தொழில்களை மக்களுக்கு பதிலளிக்க கடமைப்பட்டவர்களாக மாற்றுகிறவை. சுதந்திரமான ஊடகங்கள் முன்னெப்போதும் இல்லாத அளவுக்கு இந்திய திருநாட்டுக்கு அவசியப்படுகிற ஒரு காலகட்டத்தில் நாம் வாழ்ந்து கொண்டிருக்கிறோம். அந்த தேவையை உணர்ந்துதான் இப்போது.com கடந்த 30 மாதங்களுக்கு மேலாக உங்களோடு பயணம் செய்து கொண்டிருக்கிறது. அறிவார்ந்த தமிழ் சமூகம், அறம் செறிந்த தமிழ் சமூகம் என்கிற லட்சிய பாதையில் பயணம் செய்கிற இப்போது.com உடைய இதழாளர்கள், பத்திரிகையாளர்கள் அவர்களுக்கு அவர்களுடைய வாழ்வாதாரத்திற்காக நாம் அவ்வப்போது உங்களிடம் உதவிகளை கோரி வருகிறோம். ஒவ்வொரு செய்திகளை நீங்கள் படித்த பிறகும் அதற்கு கீழே இந்த சுதந்திரமான ஊடகத்திற்கு உங்களுடைய ஆதரவை வழங்குங்கள் என்கிற கோரிக்கை இருக்கும். அதே போல இந்த வீடியோவுக்கு கீழே உள்ள டிஸ்கிரிப்ஷன் அல்லது விளக்கத்திலும் கூட ஒரு லிங்க் இருக்கும். அந்த லிங்கை அழுத்தினீர்கள் என்றால் 5 ரூபாய், 50 ரூபாய் அல்லது 500 ரூபாய் எங்களுக்கு நிதி உதவி அளிப்பதற்கான பட்டன்கள் இருக்கும். அதை பயன்படுத்தி இப்போது.com ஆதரியுங்கள். சுதந்திரமான ஊடகவியல் மூலமாக வலுவான தமிழ் சமூகத்தை கட்டி எழுப்புவோம். நன்றி.